the stream.
Welcome to part 2 of 2 parts.
Mm-hmm. Part 2 of part 2. Part 1 of part 2.
I'm confused.
Good. That's the idea. All right. So we haven't shared the link yet, but what we are doing is sitting here broadcasting this tabletop.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Card game time. So, we've been discussing hold-ons. Time to make some hold-ons.
Mm-hmm.
Membership.
Or map them.
Yeah, so the social
Right.
structure of the mental structure can begin with the fundamental guilds, which we have already set out.
And by the way, we probably won't share the link because the chat level has been down today. So
It's all your fault.
we can carry on as we see fit. And if we completely screw this up beyond all of our expectations, then we don't have to publish it.
Awesome. But we probably
So,
will.
yes, this may be notes. This may be self-notes, in other words. So we're not putting the pressure on ourselves. Unless anybody knows my YouTube account name, in which they may be seeing this live, but we're going to call that chance minimal.
All right, let's go.
So bringing this all into towards the card game, as we've called it in the past, the card box method, the Zettelkasten game,
Trigger.
whatever. These are three unsatisfactory labels for what we're talking about here. When we talk about laying out the an isomorphic equivalent, if you would say, of the dashboard, which is a reflection of Portal Mountain, which is a virtual reality overlay, which perception itself gives you to navigate the terrain in which you stand.
So one thing I'd point out is that one of the points of this game is to make the implicit elements of thinking explicit.
Right.
So it's a way to exercise the awareness sort of muscle in a very explicit way, so that it doesn't have a chance to slip back into its normal autopilot-y
Right.
way of functioning, and it's a way to like sort of anchor it back into a concrete reality where it has to pay attention to what it's doing. So part of the game itself is to actually, why it looks so simple, basic, I guess, is to induce the exercise of paying attention to what you're doing in the most basic way. So
Right.
that's actually the point of why it goes down to these layers.
And there's a lot of self-help stuff that just tells you, oh, do a journal, do a log, write this down, write that down, keep track of things.
Sure. This is this is to take all of that and to actually systematize it and give it a functional framework through which to actually use it. Otherwise, you're just going to write whatever the fuck you write,
Mm-hmm.
without any necessary structure to being able to integrate it after the fact. So the integration after the fact
Right.
is actually quite important. Therefore, the
And
laying out of the basics is also as
that's
important.
also what makes this whole thing, and anything where we are laying out as a protocol. Remember how we've talked about a card as a protocol, and everything is a protocol. Well, because this piece of paper can contain information, and when you write into it, that means you're planning on reading it later. So it already has some imbued sense of this is an object which demands my attention and processing.
Another way to put it is
Yeah.
that you've spoken out to the environment in the expectation for it to speak back to you in a meaningful way. So part of this ritual, if you will, is to contextualize this interaction with the environment such that you are fully aware of the request response cycle that is going to be happening with it. So it's not just a matter of externalization, it's also internalizing the externalization as it's happening at the same time. That's really the key point on making
Strange loop.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
You have to have the feedback. It comes back in.
it's the key point of making it relevant to and less arbitrary, despite the fact that it's so basic.
Mm-hmm. So we do have markers in case you wish to
Can I draw a penis?
grab from your stack, and you may do that. Mm-hmm.
I'm actually not that good.
So one thing I wanted to do was, we kind of got into this the last time we did this tabletop thing, right? So I don't know if that works as a symbol or something, as a agent, right? So this is a card type of agent, right? I'm kind of describing that tabletop. The reason for having that would be to acknowledge that there are certain things, like I had to wipe off this board, it had to be wiped clean, made space for cards to happen, for stacks. So this is tabletop protocol. Tabletop agent takes care of a number of protocols which make the tabletop
Okay. So
the
making
tabletop
it
happen.
available. So creating the tabletop carrier in and of
Yes,
itself.
this is now we have the tabletop carrier. The agent is what's doing that. They're taking care of a number of things.
Right, and the end result of their function is a carrier of tabletop now becomes available.
And which we have here.
All right, so that's a basic step.
Yes. And so we'll pull this card from way up here so it can be seen. So this is what we described the last couple times. Or the last time getting into tabletop was fundamental guilds and the different agents that you would have. So you've got an agent, right? Maybe that's, I gotta learn how to do the symbol. It looks like an 8, actually. So anyways.
You're trying to do an ampersand, right?
No.
No. What
No,
are
I
you
want,
doing? What are you doing?
there's like a very specific shape.
Alpha?
It's like that. It's not an 8, but close. Anyways. So, as an example of a symbol that means, oh, this card is this type, right? That's all I just introduced, right? As annoying as that is, right? To not know what does symbols mean, right? Like, so we got tabletop, we got the agent, right? So this is where would we put that? Maybe a special place encompassing a bunch of programs running. As far as this being dashboard-like,
Well, we need to actually purpose this. So, we're tackling how to build this, but let's tackle how to do something with it. What we're trying to get to is a point of membership in which both mediation and network are meaningful, right? So that can assume that we have two members, right?
Okay.
I am member. One. You are
And
number
of
2.
what guild?
We haven't established
this
that.
will bring something up.
The what guild doesn't matter yet. The fact that there are two members is established. We then establish that these two members use a mediation protocol
Protocol.
and all of this
Wait, what protocol?
doesn't matter. And all of this exists as a network. So long as these things are true, we have a fundamental guild structure. Now, this gives us the doorway to say what protocols, this is what your question is about, are going to actually be in place. So we take that card protocol out,
Mm-hmm.
and we say protocol X. Here we say protocol Y. We're given specific protocols that establish a network called Z.
The particular proximity guild.
So we've taken an abstraction, we've given it a concrete treatment, and we've established that to
Right.
facilitate network Z, we actually
Okay.
have to have protocol XY facilitate between members 1
Now,
and 2.
What
So now
you-
it becomes more specific. Now we're going to have to understand the purpose of
Right.
these interactions. So
But-
what are we doing?
Okay, what you were saying up here is that membership is not of a specific anywhere. This is simply established as this individual identifies as a member and can be interacted with as such.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
He's-
about any particular place or location
Right.
or setting.
It's just saying that these two cards amount to having arrived at the situation.
They have, in other words,
Now
they
we can
are sharing
expand.
they're sharing this structure.
Yeah, now we can expand on specifics. We start to cover protocols and expand what the network actually means. But by establishing the initial structure, we can say that this is the structure we're working by, and we
So-
are going to facilitate protocols. We're going to facilitate protocol Y. We're going to, in an effort to facilitate network Z, because between members 1 and 2.
Yep.
So this is the progression of taking it, the very abstract self-referential idea and starting to expand it into a more particular situation. Right now it's still quite in the abstract because we haven't actually discussed what we're talking about, but if we were to say, okay, let's talk about this in the context of creating these live streams, it would mean protocol X refers to what I say, protocol Y refers to what you say. The network is going to be the totality of the conversation and the subject of the live stream itself.
In other words, what we call this our dev meeting series.
Exactly.
Boom.
Exactly. So that's the laydown of the intention of the card structure as the abstraction. As having established this, we now have what's called a proximity guild, which itself amounts to a membership card in some potentially greater context. So now we've established this greater context. We go through this exercise with some other sort of cards.
Remember, why are you summarizing all that into member A.
Because this whole interaction
Oh,
is a proximal
A
guild.
this is proximity guild.
Yeah,
label.
this whole
Yes.
thing is a proximity guild.
Right.
We then take some arbitrary.
And this is why this is a deck. That's what I've called. That's a
we
deck.
take some
You make a new deck.
situation where you have 2 other members, 3 other members, whatever, another set of protocols. Call that member
So you're having many different social contexts and
B.
describing them.
Yeah. So now you've established that. All of a sudden you have protocol on a higher level and a network on another higher level.
The hell is that noise? Just forget it.
So yeah, so you have another protocol, another there, and all of a sudden the proximity guild now is grown into yet another higher level.
Oh.
Member.
Oh yeah. So you're complexifying the various roles that roll up into bigger and bigger roles, sort of.
Yes, and some of these stacks are just you by yourself, talking to yourself, combining yourself into a much more aggregated individual, so on and so forth. Eventually that spills out, and eventually that spills out between individuals, and eventually that spills out into an entire society.
Resonance.
So that's the basic structure of the card
So
game.
we're like kind of trying to resonate sentience.
Yeah, in conceptualizations. And the feature of this, right, is what happens is that you take the whole deck, but you can then split it back out, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what commodification actually gives us, is that it allows us to play with this quite a bit.
And this is a map.
Yeah. I'm not going to try to express it all
It's
out
okay.
on paper, but the gist of the action should be quite obvious.
To reverse the process that we just did.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you can replace the individual constituents, and the network is supposed to reabsorb the changes.
Right. So the tabletop is like a shared medium.
Mm-hmm.
That's its express purpose, basically, is that it's somewhere where you're laying down cards.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if it's constructed like this or if it's just a literal table. You're having a space within a household, maybe even multiple spaces like this for here, or you could have
So,
a deck stashed here.
All these
for this or
markings you were
that.
pointing to, they could actually be used to a way to subdivide the cards so that you can keep a holistic view of the constituent parts.
And where they came from, how they stretched out.
I obviously did not do this in the demonstration. I just tried to do a rough demonstration of how they would combine into more and more aggregate things.
And we haven't even attempted to put meaning into
what we're doing here. Yeah.
The lines on the tabletop that I've constructed. Right.
Yeah, you alluded to them earlier. That's why I mentioned them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I was hoping to do with that, and I hope that was a success.
Well, we definitely have an experiment.
What do you think of this structure? Like how I just keep bunching everything back into member?
Yeah, like so the last few live streams, they're talking about carrier stacking, agency and agency roll up. It makes perfect sense, and so this is what we want to be able to describe in a less chaotic manner. Like maybe
Well, yeah, this is like a demo.
if we had a bigger table or a floor, right, to extend cards out, you could have this as a focus point, and these lines could mean like a conversation or discussion. So let's talk about the dashboard. Is this dashboard like? How do we make a dashboard like?
So
First thing,
these are messages.
we are having a conversation which is
Mhm.
being recorded by audio. When things get written down,
It's been
then
recorded by
we're
paper.
moving. We have a tendency of moving towards the devotional part of the dashboard
Right, broadcasting.
because we are selecting something that's important out of what we're talking about.
And it's already like, yeah, it's like a complete soundbite
Right.
already.
The talking about just goes on and on and on, and I'm rambling, and nobody needs to hear this ever again. Anything that I keep on saying.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
no.
what's written down is different, so that's a jump, that's a leap. And this dashboard, the tabletop needs to be the dashboard protocol, if you want to call it that,
Mhm.
the card game, needs to keep into account that anytime you have an interaction between people, you have a conversation. You have a real-time thing unfolding. And then you have also these narratives.
Yeah,
popping out.
The broadcasts, as we would call them, or
Broadcasts. Yep.
documents, like the expositional documents of what's been said, the record of.
Almost like favorite artifacts. Or
Right.
like
Right.
really good artifacts that just take a piece of it.
And then the third stage is to arrange them into a coherent structure to say, okay, this refers to that, this refers to that, like it's talking about this part of the ontology, sort of thing.
And you're
And
talking
then-
about the abstractions.
Yeah, so they're like, so the database itself has to actually be associative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a relational database. And the fourth, of course, is the dynamics of it referring back to itself, doing things like if this plus that is this, then therefore this also exists. So as soon as these elements appear within the system, they actually have to also mean a certain thing with the fact of their appearance. So much like membership immediately implies mediation in a network, because the membership is in relation to how one mediates in a network to
Mhm.
begin with. Those things have to actually appear all at the same time. So that sort of element is the more
Right. And so
generative aspect of
to bring this all back
the
to
dashboard.
concrete, we're now playing a game which incorporates this dashboard idea, in which we know we're having a conversation, and some things are getting written down, and then some things are becoming more abstracted, and yet some things are already the most abstracted that it could be. Where was the original? Was it that one? No, there was in the back, right? So if we put that up there, right?
That's as abstract as you can actually
Do you
get.
see how that kind of works?
Supposed
Just
to.
shifted the camera. Yep. Good. Yep. So like way up there, kind of on its own. In
Yeah.
like, so this tabletop recognizes, there's a spot to recognize what your highest kind of abstraction is.
And despite the fact that you went into details down here, when you put it all together, when you put this stack of cards all together, you actually wind up right back at the beginning with it being
Right.
as abstract as
So
you
it's,
started with.
it's isomorphic, even though
You're not
it's very different.
The
Different materials completely. Isomorphism is dependent on the interpreter.
and well, yes, it's dependent on the interpreter because of their insistence on interpreting it this way. Does that make sense?
Fine. Or that recognition of natural interpretation.
Which, I mean, it's the same thing.
Yep.
Okay. I'm down.
Cool. So this board, like I tried kind of getting to the design of it. I assumed, like, so we've got fundamental, and this isn't even the way it was originally conceived, but the fundamental, it's in its own little tiny triangle, way off in the corner. There's not going to be much competition to that.
So you're saying that, but check this out. Because this is happening, what's fundamental gets more concrete with each phase. Right? Because if this is already established, if you've established what this member is by going up the stack, right?
Yeah.
Which makes it more and more and more and more and more concrete.
I know.
As soon as you move that all the way over there and you establish that as your fundamental, everything that's more concrete than that is got to be corresponding to that fundamentals. So this way you can shorten the game, the chain of the game, by placing what's more fundamental as a more concrete thing. So as soon as you place some concrete guild on top of that.
I'm not sure. Like, I see any rolling up as already acknowledging and understanding this.
Well, yeah,
part of here.
this is the implicit made it explicit, right? So on one layer, the cards are laid out this way.
Like, yeah.
On another layer, the cards are actually laid out this way and demand more concrete protocols, more concrete members. Because this member establishes the new network.
You may have just identified the flow over the tabletop of this particular game structure.
Yeah.
To pull fundamentals up.
Yeah.
And use that as
and as soon as you get stuck down here, right? You put the game aside, pull the cards back down, and try to resolve the problem at the upper layer.
Right. That's why it's there. It's presumed relevant.
So as soon as you move something up there, you assume it. You like take it on faith, right? But as soon as that doesn't work out, you examine your faith, if you will, rearrange it, and make sure it's a conviction. And then, of course, you take it on faith. And then you play the game over and over again. And that actually would make the game actually useful.
Fine. Okay. Yep. That's what I saw when I saw it lay out like that. Yep. That's kind of different than the triadic holonic model of, oh, this is here, that's there, that's there.
This is more the proximal model, actually. This is the initial guild dynamics model.
So this is slightly more useful. You assume things fundamental, and they go back towards you, that player probably in that corner.
And as soon as you need to rearrange to rethink something, you can pull out what you assume to make sure that it's going to line up with other concrete things down the line. And so when that doesn't seem to happen, the problem is probably somewhere in the more fundamental abstraction layers.
So one thing that we didn't really...
That would be useful.
I think so, as a game mechanic flow. Yep, towards the smaller area of the game board, you pull fundamentals, and you say, these are my axioms, and then this is the shitstorm, is taking up half the board.
And most games wouldn't actually begin with trying to establish that. They would assume a stack, and only when there's problems they would try to pull cards back down. Because you don't want to give a stack that's incomplete to begin with.
And the Art of War.
Yeah. So that would be
fine.
Yeah, this would be that
because you don't want to trigger.
The game.
You don't want to trigger for no reason.
Yeah, that's the game,
right? You'll say, when some shitstorm happens here, that makes me prove. That's when the game goes up in abstraction. This mechanism is what's doing that. Therefore, I win. Okay, you have your perspective, and we'll see what happens.
And then you can tease out actually if the perspectives are isomorphic, but just not in an obvious way.
Which would be ideal which is the cooperative mode, and ideal, and should always be assumed. But
Jesus fucking Christ, it's a great game.
yeah, yeah, many modes I think too, but we'll get to there. But like this board, how it looks, as I envisioned it, would have 4 players, 4 boards, potentially. Like this would be a big game, right?
Oh, and this would be like the
So-
middle corner?
That's the center piece, the center
Right.
corner, right?
Right, and each one brings us their own individual guild into it.
Right.
Their own membership card, so to speak.
So
into
yeah,
the,
to the top left of the screen is the center pool kind of area. And that's where
and
where
then you can get,
fundamentals.
and then you can get them to pull out their inner cards so that you can reference your inner cards and then see where the deeper isomorphism might be. So every time you step down a layer, you can take the more abstract card down, stick your less you can always go more abstract this way. So if something isn't matching between all of you on this layer, you take yours off, compare it this way. Take yours off again, compare it that way. And everybody else can do the same.
Well, and that's what you should do with any category, any title, any label.
Yeah.
Is break it out into meaning.
But notice how you keep meaning personal, but then it's the layers you peel away from it that you actually do get to compare, not the label. It's the underneath stuff you compare. If something doesn't match in the label space,
exactly, yeah. That's when you know. So you
you
feel that
remove
affect.
you
the
remove a
affect
layer of
comes to you.
abstract.
Oh, this feels not good.
Yeah, you remove the layer of abstraction and you keep going, or a concrete aspects, and you figure out where the abstraction went wrong.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's many different modes of this game. Some more political, more adversarial, more battle. Some more cooperative, some more meditative. Like just all different kinds of what you can do with a card.
That would literally depend on what this card, the most concrete card you ever lay at the center at the start of that game,
Right.
will dictate the kind of game it's going to
So
be.
that's where the game starts. Is
Holy shit.
we start at the high point, the pinnacle of our own thought.
The most concrete, and then drill down to the abstraction to the point of memetics, which is the meditative exercise.
Good. I think we have a game mode. Yep, facilitation of the guild.
Finally, we did it. It's been a hard fucking thing to pinpoint, isn't it? But this looks like an actual game now.
I'm hopeful. I like that one. Yep, where we went with that.
And even if you start with that membership, that doesn't mean that that's the last concrete thing. It means that you are this is your starting point to make more concrete things and potentially peel those layers back again. And
Right.
reassemble
So from
them.
your own perspective, you could say, okay, I played fundamental guilds. I dropped the roles of fundamental guilds, right, in my center, and now so nobody gets it, right? But then you can start laying out like these are the constraints of this and that, and this is how this works. So in your own little kind of constellation, you're drawing a bunch of stars that say membership in the fundamental guild, right? And you don't know if it's going to be fruitful.
So, fundamentally speaking, this corner belongs to the membership card. What the membership entails is a particular description of a guild, beginning with fundamental, which is its most basic bottom
Right.
out,
So this is the fundamental guild, yes.
followed by the mediation guild in and of itself as a whole.
Do you mean membership and then mediation?
Membership,
Or
mediation.
one and the other?
And then
one
mediation.
is the same,
Those are the cards that will go there like to bootstrap everything.
Mm-hmm.
Those are unpeelable layers. Like, I mean, you can peel them back, but you can change them.
Yeah, for our purposes in the model and what we're seeing.
Basically, what would
yes,
happen? What would
they-
happen is that if you take them as raw, the membership would have like mediation as protocol and network as concrete. We put mediation here, and you'll get like members protocol and network is concrete. Like
Right.
they'll just keep changing into each other.
Looking at the other two as abstract and concrete pairs.
Yeah, of
Right.
the mimetic one.
That's
So
pretty
these ones
insane.
will be in a loop.
Insanity.
But as soon as you place them all in this corner, you can diversify into the next guild, which is your loop back. So that's the next constraint. From the loop back, you can constrain yourself to the familial, from the familial to the geographical, from the geographical to the associational. And the associational one just explodes everywhere. And for simplicity's sake, we can start the game all the way at the proximal. That's for simplicity's sake, because all of these things can be assumed.
Right.
It's only when we need to
That you
into them.
you have a family structure and it's all cool and everything's good, and we're just two people in society connecting.
Yeah. So
Correct.
Up until you need to dig into that point, you don't really need to make it explicit. So we can, even though that this is all assumed, that there's like a stack behind the stack behind the stack.
Of course.
We can condense it all to membership. And which proximal guild are we talking about here?
Fundamental.
And as soon as we put that membership down, we can extrapolate what the associative guild is all about.
Mm-hmm. And you yourself, having played on your own tabletop the membership card, can proceed to unfold and unfurl that in context. What it means in your
this
own
is your
board.
context.
Your board.
Next board. Now you do the comparison.
Yeah. Some other board has their board, which they have their primary card.
Right. That's their proximal guild. The combined effort is the proximal guild above which the game is.
Right.
Now, I don't know how this resolves argument yet.
There's
does?
different types of games.
But that's the
Different
basics.
types.
But that's the basic structure I see. Perfect. I love it.
Right? Yep. If you have an argument, you start lining up what your argument delineates as, like what your actual issue is, right? And to the borders of the two different tabletops coming together. And you can these boards can be separated by 2-3 feet. You can have cards just coming in between them.
What's interesting is that you can take any two boards apart.
Yeah.
Take another board in between and start mediating.
With high enough skill, yes.
That's the point. But yeah.
Yeah, right. If you see like what this, yeah, exactly. This is a representation.
If you and I are just like still like ready to go to blows, over like a definition of some membership.
And the tabletop is intended to be a representation of one's inner understanding of their own worldview.
Yeah, so when you start to map to other people,
so therefore,
that's the
yes, somebody else could come in and mediate if they understand one tabletop and they understand another tabletop.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, the tabletops do not understand each other. In other words, these two people don't understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the value right there. And that would be the goal and the role of mastery, is to bridge the variation of tabletops.
And also, like, when you're having a game involving mind mapping and putting these tabletops down, and it's practically explicit that you're using fundamental guilds, you're going to have educational material that will push you towards membership in the fundamental guild.
That's what allows a lot of it to be assumed.
Which allows the players of the game to eventually converge.
And so this is what allows us to place down a very concrete card down first, instead of having to wade through all the damn fundamentals, which at this point of the game, every single player should actually be aware of. They should play that.
Right. At this point, we're assuming, yeah, but
that's the idea.
Doesn't matter.
No, that's the game. That is the game. You gotta have that skill. You gotta have that understanding.
If you're playing it. To be said to have been playing the game, yes, you must be a member of it. And there are people who are not playing the game, but they have their board, and there's a teaching opportunity right there. And
the teaching opportunity can be confined to the fundamentals only.
That's the first thing that must happen is membership in the fundamental guild. The fundamental guild.
And then place them into their associated guild like this and go from this point on. Right. This is yours.
So like big picture, this is like our kind of viral payload envelope carrier. Like the idea of having all these technologies. This is how we're efficiently communicating with each other, with other people, of mind mapping what's in our mind. And then connecting that to other minds in a game, right? So this is our medium which facilitates this religious idea.
And a game consisting of very siloed players whose only recourse into connecting with each other is some kind of common language, some kind of common narrative, some kind of common strand that all of us can actually hold on to without necessarily needing to doubt it.
Yep. So you're talking about what we have to come up with as a shared language, so to speak, or commonalities.
In a way, our cells trust our DNA, right? Like our cells don't think of our DNA as something that, to be tested or verified or
Ooh, that's hard to talk about in a higher layer, though.
Well, no, this is why this is why the integration is so important, because that higher layer has to be able to do that for itself.
Ultimately, yes, that's what we are going for.
Isomorphism. Capital I. Isomorphism with nature and its cause. Funny, man.
Thoughts, ideas?
My thoughts and ideas always revolve around one funny observation.
Which is?
It isn't until I touch something that it materializes into something.
When you touch it, then it becomes...
Yeah, it's like... It's not a holier than thou symptom or anything like that. It's just more of a... What the fuck is my connection to, like, this kind of understanding that helps like this, that doesn't occur to others?
I know.
Why? Where's my
and
speciality?
there's also, which you should appreciate, why or when, in what case, is your insight appreciated? Can you just dump it anywhere?
Yeah.
Can you dump it here? Can you dump it
I
there?
can only dump it on you. You're the only dump. You're the only receptacle I have.
we like
Consistent one anyway.
we like mimetics. We like foregrounding. We like backgrounding.
You spend enough attention that you take in the entire narrative, point from beginning to end, which is necessary for something like what I have to be expressed. Like I have to go all the way through. Otherwise,
I've
it's
noticed.
Just,
Yeah,
otherwise
and
it's
here we are
incomplete.
at like episode 15. 15 part 2.
Yeah.
Damn.
It's not a bragging point by any means. It's just I'm trying to pinpoint what it is I can actually. What can I actually reflect in such a way that I'm not the only one doing it, specifically.
And I think I'm a good filter for that, because I'm always thinking like, what does it mean that I should actually do? What are you telling me to do? What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
You know, it's that's kind of like I think of a
Or every time
filter
something
that
is
way.
thrown at me, I can see like a plethora of like no. You know, like
All the ways to get it
web
wrong.
you're gonna get caught in.
All the ways to go wrong. Yep.
Like I always see the spider web behind.
And it's so typical that we would go that way too. The wrong way. Do 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 do.
Now, the one thing that strikes me very interesting is that the commentary agrees schizophrenia because the entire model is actually is essentially created in a schizophrenic way. If you think about it, it's entirely loosely associated. Like it's using that as a mechanism to justify itself to begin with. So this loose association with regard to truth, if you will, with regard to truth being incomprehensible to begin
This
with.
kind of like conspiracy
Holy
theory.
fuck.
Conspiracy theory and like all kinds of implications about that, like just molding types from one type to another, seeing objects in weird ways, and
So you can actually say that this entire model is using schizophrenia, if you will, not the clinical one, but the conceptual one.
the tendency as
towards
case
that.
example
As a fundamental framework.
of a neurosis.
Yeah. And the implication that has on schizophrenia. That it's a disease that is formed by the stressors of not being able to connect the world together to begin with, coupled with an extreme amount of inability to react to the world,
Which we all find ourselves in, and which fuels that schizophrenia. Like I think you were getting to that. The commodification of all life and the way we interact fuels that very mechanism.
that is like the outcome of it. Like if the mind is subjected to a pure marketing mechanism, it will never be healthy.
Yeah, man.
Ever.
And because everything like should be a conspiracy, and like all the different ways to fuck people over.
Well, yeah,
Like-
conspiracy becoming real simply because everybody lives in the dream world, and therefore conspiracies are as real as whoever thinks them.
And they're a part of it, and they're doing it. And here it
And
comes.
enacting them.
Yep, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
And reifying them, ultimately. The Civil War doesn't exist because there is a Civil War. The Civil War exists because people say there is one. Capital attacks.
Well, 500,000 people died too, right? History is interesting. they say things happen. And the Civil War, and then you got modern relevance due to like slavery, and like did they ended slavery, and is that really the reason why they did the Civil War, and like was it just opportunity, or like did people really give a shit, or like what was the actual moment, what was the experience of a soldier at the time being propelled, or a patriot, like I'm gonna be part of the war now, even though I could just live my life nice, but the Brits
there's enough movie to tell you exactly what that
whatever.
Was like. If you don't go out fighting, I won't fuck you, says the wife.
Oh, that's yeah. And then the magazine's released, and the magazine telling the wife, "Oh, if your man isn't in the war, then he ain't a man.
He's a coward." Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's north, south, left, right, Democrat, Republican type, straight up with issues added on top of it.
The South is a very, very, very typical example of the lazy, blind, rich man, where they perceive the efforts of their output, the output,
right,
to be the product of their efforts.
So Randian.
However, the effort that they put into it is minimal and is offloaded onto almost everything else but themselves.
Right.
That
Parks and Recreation.
That shows up through the effort to maintain slavery in terms of prison labor right now.
Sure, yeah.
But also, it shows up in the way that they utilize federal funds. The states that supply the least monetary aid into the federal bank, if you will, are the ones that utilize it the most.
Typical.
So
Fine.
there's like a
redistribution, as they call it.
There's a continuous element into the South where it takes far more than it actually gives out.
Do you think how that's true? Like,
it's
statistically
it's a statistical truth. Yes.
Is it
it's a
modern too? Like,
no, it's since inception. Like
the
all
South because it's warm, because it's hot, or what causes people not to be lazy?
All the way to the revolution. One of the main arguments in the
so that's why they wanted slaves.
In the formulation of the new government for the United States was like a bunch of southern states were saying things like we're like great producers, and we do not take all of your tax money like the rest of the northern states do.
Which
to which the reply was essentially like, yeah, we know why. Because you got slaves to do all that work. Therefore,
yeah.
Therefore, you're clearly not taking
the narrative's burning up. Yep.
The taxes from the reserve, but you're not. You're getting away on free rides.
Okay. So actually, the weaker in this case is saying, "Hey, you stronger."
And it's it's a constant.
Fuck that. You're hurting people.
Yeah, it's a constant, and that's why the South is fucked up as it is, both reputationally and historically, because it maintains that narrative for itself.
Well, there's no slavery anymore, so like it kind of has to. It has. Well, okay, there's no, but the image has to dissolve.
Why is the southern states, so adamant about retaining prison labor? Because it's the next substitute.
They moved over to that?
Yeah. Like, as soon as slavery was outlawed, they criminalized the shit out of the black population as much as possible and retained control over labor.
But isn't there equal justice under law?
Sure. On paper.
I'm just making you articulate.
All right, no, like sure, on paper. You got
on paper, yes.
You got this guy going, oh, there's equal justice under law. Go back to work. N-word.
Yeah, or
you're a criminal, therefore, under law.
Or like.
Here's our justice. N-word.
Like.
Just like that, by the way. That's the
bringing,
actual thought process.
Bring it back to like culture and generational bootstrapping of good culture and all that kind of stuff. Like.
Well, what are poor kids being bootstrapped into? If not this exact resonant stupidity.
That's what I'm saying, right?
So the bootstrapping.
And this is, I think, the big argument.
Isolated.
I think this is the big argument right
and
there.
So long as the bootstrapping is the way it is, any attempt to say resolve quote unquote racism isn't going to work because you're dealing with isolated individuals who live in their own little tiny worlds that do not bleed into the perspectives of other people at all. And then you have that habituated.
Right. And how would they have such a kind of bleeding in or sharing of wisdom and information? This kind of a structure, which does not exist.
And even if you
generational,
you can say even for yourself, like your the experience of your quote unquote sheltered life prohibited you from seeing certain things that I'm pointing out to you straight up. Like I am friends with people who are, so like she's white, he's black.
Oh wait, now you're taking me to an extreme here.
Yeah. But you don't experience this, so I'm going to give you the.
No, but
I don't know how
you're pushing my identity into an extreme. Of,
no. I just know
sheltered.
I just know you from being and I know, and it's based on what you've said before, not necessarily pushing you.
Fine.
It's based on what you've said, and it's based on what you said. You've never seen this, and you probably haven't seen this because Gary was rich as fuck, right? Gary was black, yes, but Gary was rich. An exception, which means that the way you get treated isn't necessarily the same as you would see what statistics I'm talking about. On the other hand, I just happen to be like my wife is friends with another person who has kids. Those kids came
to hear
from
stories.
A relationship.
So you're hearing stories which are building up your myth.
And then they live right next door to us, and I know this from an everyday perspective of their lives, so to speak, and in their everyday lives, things like being pulled over.
They have this problem of categorical reification.
Having
right?
Yes, having kids call out names towards them for no other reason than their biological makeups. So they basically. These are real things that happen.
So here's a side point. I grew up in school with glasses. Therefore, I was the one out of none who exists to be ostracized and picked on.
Which is kind of weird because as another person with glasses who grew up with a lot of people with glasses in the same school, it kind of sounds kind of weird.
I guess I didn't, because that was a main one.
No,
but like so this idea
issue.
that people can be discriminated against for many different things, and this is this is what we share in common, really, from a model perspective, from who we are inside.
That's why it becomes so difficult for poor people who are also marginalized but happen to be on the privileged side to understand what privilege means. Because when you're poor, understanding what privilege means is actually, when you're rich, understand privilege is also difficult, but that's from a different point of ignorance.
And yes, so keep that all in mind, but also we all are judged unconsciously by and how we are educated into this culture to reify the market.
As soon as you're blonde and blue-eyed, like I mean, the idea of you being a racist is just like it's easy.
Right.
It's easy to like get there.
Are you saying that's bad?
No, I'm saying that this is the way it works.
No, like nobody points that out. I haven't heard that one before.
You're blonde and blue. Nobody knows you're blonde and blue-eyed. I mean,
Except who are watching the live stream.
Yeah. But like you can imagine, as soon as you say anything about race, as a blonde, blue-eyed person,
Right, because I'm the top supposedly or whatever.
Because the Nazis chose you.
Right.
Once upon
I've
a
been
time.
chosen by Hitler himself.
Right.
Fuck. Ugh.
No, that's just like me being.
I
a
just
Jew.
want to be accepted because of
It's-
my glasses.
it's
So
just like
nobody
me
ever
being a Jew.
fucking accepted me.
It's like me being a Jew, and all of a sudden I'm supposedly behind all of the ills of the world. It's the same stupid thing.
Right.
Like I'm.
Here we are.
I'm a person. You're a person. We only have limited knowledge about what the fuck we're born into to begin with. Trying to make
True.
the best of it. Trying to make not to be an asshole and just once in a while using the wrong fucking words.
Don't do that.
Yeah. And then yeah, it's. But the autopilot is strong. Oh.
Yes, and that is
Coming
the
back to this
autopilot.
game. What is
How
happening?
do we sort that out with this game?
Well, like no, we can. We are. Look right now.
Okay.
What is happening is essentially white racist is getting put right there, but it's never actually
Unpacked.
unpacked into this.
Correct.
And when you don't do any of that,
Correct.
you only live on that. You only ever get protocols based off of that goddamn label.
Right.
So that's
Right.
that's the other.
So
point of this game.
at the spear of this game, this tabletop, is like how you want to present and interact with others. Like this is my main thing.
Yeah.
You put it up front, and then you unpack.
But now you have two different directions to go into. You can go all the way to the guild, if you have to make your point. Or, if you're dealing with actual members and masters and so forth, you can leave the abstraction on the table and move on into a better, more granular, concrete.
Just doing the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
How do you mean by otherwise?
The other game that you're going to be playing is instead of putting a card down and extrapolating from it, is you're going to be putting a card down and breaking into it by putting it aside and taking inner cards down and breaking that out, and then reassembling them back up. Because with members and masters, you're going to be building up on existing ideas. With participants, with guests,
right.
you're going to be taking existing ideas and breaking them back down
Right.
into the basics.
Correct. Yeah. In other words, seeing what the root is of that
Yeah.
idea.
And so the game goes both ways. To build and to deconstruct.
How does it look on the tabletop? One or the other?
What it looks like is you need to decide.
For which one?
What
If you're building or deconstructing.
You need to decide membership. What layer is it going to appear at? Is it going to appear at as a concrete association guild? Is it going to appear as membership of associate? What is guilds themselves? So a deeper level of abstraction, or is it going to be appearing on the fundamental layer, so you can start the game from scratch?
Right.
So it's basically who you pick
True.
to be your player.
Yeah.
That this
so
membership is going to actually.
this is
mean
your
something.
board, your mind map
Mhm.
to yourself. What's being played out there, or what's happens unfolds.
And it unfolds in the context of somebody else. So you're going to have to unfold their cards somehow based on
Right.
these cards.
Yep.
So the pivotal point will be what kind of membership are you choosing? Which layer of the guild dynamics you're going for?
And this is
The most concrete is, of course, association.
this is like what do they call it? Ambassador role. Kind of.
Yeah.
Just because you don't know who the other person is in their agency wise, the stacking.
Which potentially means that you put a card down called member without any other context.
Right. And what
And
does that
then-
member of what?
And then
They
based on
ask
their-
the question.
based on their response, you either develop the member outwards, or break down the member into its constituent underneath network guild.
Yes. So if you recognize that they have recognized what membership means, then you build it inward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
And you try to associate the guilds. If you can't associate the guild, you start to build the guild from the outside in.
Build the guild. Yep. Mm-hmm. Like connecting, bridging.
Yeah.
What are you interested in? Okay, I'm
which
interested.
means that you have, like, regardless of which member card you put down, if it comes down to the fundamental guilds, you actually have a stack
By default for the fundamental guilds which you can lay out. So the deepest stack is in a loop, so you don't have to keep going. There's no turtles all the way down.
Right. Fundamental guild.
Yeah,
itself.
they're in terms of each other.
Right.
So you don't have to.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go all the way down to like a turtle thing.
They don't go all the way down.
You gotta loop.
It's better that way.
Well, the self-reference is what blocks the layers from disintegrating, right? Otherwise,
Agreed.
Without the self-reference, the layers would not actually mean anything. There would be no stacks, there would be no agencies. So-
Mucho agreed.
and it's all about the coin.
Yeah.
Hello? Hi.
Oh, I'm gonna run.
Oh shit. Okay, we got a little bit sidetracked. It's 4:45.
Yeah.
Okay, we gotta go.
Yeah, you're home.
Alright. I wasn't aware because I'm not sitting in front of the clock right now, but
Did you?
we're running.
Yeah, we're good.
I picked up my phone when you called.
We'll be on time.
We're going. Thank you for the reminder. Yes. Yes. I'm assuming Brian is going to leave his equipment.
Of course.
then come back to
No,
it.
Just the sooner you hang up, the sooner we're home.
The sooner I hang up, the sooner we're home. That's what he's saying. You jerk. Okay, I'll see you soon. He didn't.
Durr.